Welcome to the Future of Tourism podcast, a series of candid one-on-one conversations with the leaders, luminaries, and futurists of the industry. My name is David Peacock. I'm the Senior Advisor to the Future Tourism Group at Simpleview. My guest is Trevor Tkach, CEO of Visit Traverse City, and today we talk about the coronavirus, its impact on tourism in his region, and what he's doing to mitigate the crisis, prepare for recovery, and to lead his stakeholders in the industry into the future. Trevor, good morning. How are you? And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, Peacock, always good to see you, my friend.
Thank you.
Things are good here in Traverse City despite the circumstances we find ourselves in. You know, it's still gorgeous. I'm sitting in my office. I'm overlooking West Grand Traverse Bay, and I wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world right now. So, you know, I should be home probably teaching my kids arithmetic or something like that. I got 3 young ones. So we're just going through it like every other American family right now. But it's, it's nice to know we're all kind of in this together and we're helping each other out. And I appreciate you reaching out.
Well, Trev, it's always good to talk to you. And one of the things that I really have had the luxury of doing this week is reaching out and talking to CEOs and leaders across the country. And I can't tell you personally, just the real sense of relief I get as I talk to these people and realize that we have a shared burden, but we're also working very hard at it individually and with the idea of coming back together on what happens next and what we do next. But before we get into that, I want to talk to you about your background. You're a University of Michigan MBA grad.
Yes.
You jumped into sport tourism. Tell me about your path to tourism.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's no, I don't think there's any one clear path into the CVB and DMO space, right? I mean, it finds you, I guess I'd say, right? So for me, it was sports. Started there. I worked in minor league sports and then in research, and ended up, when I moved back to my hometown of Traverse City, Michigan, ended up working for the National Cherry Festival as a business development manager. And I started there kind of in the deepest parts of the recession. So creating revenue and profit centers for a dying, iconic, nationally recognized event really is what got me interested in destination development and the idea of placemaking and the better representation of a broader regional destination as I saw it. I mean, our festival, of course, was linked back to agriculture, but there were a lot of other, a great deal of cultural significance to it. 150 events over 8 days, including a free air show over the bay and concerts all week long and great parades and all this other Americana sort of tradition there. 600,000 people converging on a city of 15,000 in the summertime for nearly 100 years. So, I mean, I had a strong appreciation for it growing up here, definitely understood it better having worked for it. I became the executive director 5 years in to my tenure there. And then eventually the gentleman who was working here for Traverse City Tourism as the CEO, Brad Van Domelen, who I'm sure a lot of the listeners, viewers know, who then went on to Virginia Beach and has since retired. He came to me when he was about to leave, and he's like, Trevor, you do this job already. I mean, you're a representative for the region. You understand it well. And I said to him, I'm not a CVB guy. And he's like, yeah, there really aren't any CVB guys. I mean, you're a business person. You understand the destination, and that's what wins. So I applied. The rest is history. You know, I've really enjoyed my time here, and I feel like I do the same job I did for the Cherry Festival. It's just on steroids. I get to do it all day, every day, 365 days a year.
Well, it's been really great, and I will mention that Trevor is one of our beta partners on some of our destination digital excellence and reputation management stuff, and we will talk about that later in the month. But I do want to pivot and talk about the question that's on all of our minds: what's it like on the ground right now in Traverse City? Where are you at, Trevor?
Yeah, these are clearly interesting times for all of us. We're trying to navigate, financially navigate it. Promotionally navigate, but where Traverse City is finding it to be extremely challenging is we're just coming into our most popular season. Summertime in the Great Lakes region is paramount. We have to have that season to sustain the other 3 and to be on the cusp of what would be, prime marketing time, knowing our attribution window. We had already begun to spend quite a bit of money, and we're a leisure destination. for the most part, although group business is an important part of our model. So we're in this weird spot where we're trying to shut off all of our marketing that we're just in. And this would be, we're talking millions of dollars. We're trying to either delay contracts, cut them off. We've got people on layoffs and furlough days. I think others are catching up to that. But the reality is, depending on how long the crisis goes and stretches out for, if we lose a July or an August, I mean, that would devastate us. I think, and if I was thinking about it this morning, if this would have hit in the fall, Peacock, we'd be having a totally different conversation. It'd be like, well, we just missed that one, right? Like we just got past our prime time. So our bank is full. We know we can sustain a winter because we normally do. But for this, I mean, we normally, just to give people watching an idea of what, for us financially, where we are, we would normally try to burn down to zero balance in July. We'd try to spend all of our dollars by July because that's when we'd start to see an uptick. We'd hit a line of credit there for a little bit, and then we'd start to replenish the bank accounts. Well, now we're in burn down mode, but we're literally we are on trajectory to hit zero July. We've extended it now after making some cuts, but the reality is we're going to be at zero soon still. I mean, within the year, and no, there's nothing there to replenish it, right? So it's a very difficult time, and trying to navigate that, and watching others in similar circumstances right now try to navigate that is challenging. We're learning as we go.
Well, we've talked a bit about your adjustment on budgets, and you did mention earlier that you've adjusted, 30, 60, 90, 120 day scenarios. Tell me a little bit about the lag time, though, between revenues and occupancy and revenues. You're a big hotel destination. You've got great hotel partners. Their occupancy rates are probably sitting down in the 10 percentiles right now, right?
Yeah, we're lower than that. Now, right now, March, we projected to come in maybe at about 50% of our projection, and we might be right on that. April, when we ran our model, we put it at zero, because honestly, I don't see money coming in. Even if we have a few hotels that are doing business, assessment on hotel stays is probably the last thing you're worried about. You're trying to keep the lights on, and you're trying to pay your staff. So there's going to be an even greater lag time in collections now, which we're recognizing and preparing for. But yeah, we kind of ran what I'd call like a Marriott model, where, we looked at over the next 3 quarters, what's life really going to look like? Maybe even optimistically, I'll say being at 20% of your goal, 40% of your goal, and then 60% of your goal through the end of the year. When we ran that model, we were going to miss our nut by 60% of the budget. And for us, I mean, not that we have a ton of overhead operating costs. We don't have a convention center. We don't have some of those expenses and burdens that others bear. But the reality is, even at that, with a low burn rate, we're going to burn out our candle pretty quickly with no cash flow.
What's the actual situation in-house look like right now? Can we talk about that? And
Yeah, I think it's important that we discuss this very openly. I've been asking the question for weeks of my counterparts, what are you doing? How are you going to handle this? And everybody I'd say we all kind of had blinders on at first. Maybe I drank the hysteria Kool-Aid earlier than others, but we've laid off half our staff. And we've got the rest of the staff on furlough or taking other concessions at this point, just to try to get through the year financially. I'm grateful that, the U.S. Government is seeing it fit to, add some unemployment benefits that I think will help sustain some of those families and employees that are in this position with us. But, I think those are right now, they're very temporary. So a lot of optimism that we'll be able to get back online. But there'll be a new reality once we get through this. I sent people home. It's been like 3 weeks now. We had March 10th. We had a party to celebrate bringing we brought a whole new county into our CVB, into our DMO. So we're celebrating 21 new member properties coming in. 3 days later, I was sending all of my staff home to work from home. I mean, that's how quickly everything turned. You went from having a celebration where you have all these people together to talk about a new business strategy for a regional marketing campaign and promise to the tourism economy in this region, and then to convert that conversation within the 3 or 4 days to everybody go home. I don't want to see you. Don't come to the office. Take care of your families. I mean, you have to be cognizant, and you have to react quickly, because you don't want to put people's lives in jeopardy. And now we're thinking about financially, you don't want to have long-term negative impact on families. So making tough decisions right now is far more critical than ever, so that you'll have something to give them at the end of the day.
Well, and those tough decisions, part of that is recovery. And I'm going to share a little bit of our experiences here in Canada, in Toronto. We were hit particularly hard by the SARS crisis, 2003. The recovery from that was long. And I will tell you, our major urban centers like Toronto arguably took 9 or 11 years to get back to the numbers they were seeing before SARS. But we did see something interesting, which was the reemergence pattern was something that that you could relatively predict, thinking about human behavior. The first travel was visiting friends and relatives, and then it was to proximate destinations where you could do day trips and feel safe and come home to your refuge. And after that, it was short overnights. Traverse City is, I think, a poster child for a transient tourism destination in the world. I like to use it as a case study when I can. Ideally, in the recovery period, you will be seeing a lot of pressures from Detroit and South Michigan as they look and remember this safe place. How does that affect your thinking in the recovery phase? You knowing that you're not just going to have to, keep your operation running, keep it sound, but you're also going to have to, in some sense, deal with the sustainability issue. And I'm sure you've already thought about some of this. I know you have a cottage population who likes to move up there to get away from things. What does that look like for you?
It's interesting you bring up the cottage population. That's got a whole different dynamic to it right now, because a lot of people in the Detroit, Southeast and Southwest Michigan, who own those cottages are trying to escape, some of the challenging health crisis predicaments they find themselves in, and they're coming north. And now we're, reluctant to have them come north. It's like, talk about it, mixed messages. Hey, everybody come up north. And then all of a sudden we're saying, no, stop, and advising people to self-quarantine once they get here. So, we're worried about our own healthcare systems being overrun here in Northern Michigan. But that said, getting beyond the crisis, we have a great regional airport here. In fact, one of the top regional airports in the country. In fact, in Michigan, it's the third most popular airport. If you think about that per capita, that's crazy, because there's far bigger cities in Michigan, but Traverse City is just extremely popular. We have been growing our fly marketing efforts and our direct flight markets significantly every year. Dallas, has been a huge target for us. Atlanta, the DC area, places where it's extremely hot and uncomfortable in the summer. These folks love to golf. They love to be on the water. They love to fish and boat. Traverse City is an ideal spot, and we're still affordable in the grand scheme of things. So we've been a destination of choice by plane and growing in popularity. What we're predicting is that we're going to have to concede a lot of that market share this year. We don't have any direct flights like that planned now. The big three carriers, of course, have really ratcheted back. Some of our smaller carriers are holding on as best they can, mostly just to get snowbirds back to Traverse City. But we're going to have a much different, airline coverage than what we had anticipated. So we're going to have to depend on the drive market. And, Michigan actually travels pretty well within Michigan. Michiganders love Michigan. We're a cul-de-sac. We don't get cross-state traffic like most others do. So we depend on taking care of ourselves. And I'd say about 85% of our business does come from within the state in the summer, definitely throughout the year. So we will depend on first kicking off an in-state campaign to try to get people back on the road and get them moving. Like you said, go visit family, go visit friends. A lot of that is in-state travel. And then we're going to, focus on a Midwest regional sort of campaign. We're going to have limited funds and limited opportunity, because the summer will be shorter, the whole season will be shorter. So, and this is maybe words of advice. I was going to reiterate it maybe towards the end too. We're going to have to all be prepared to go further into debt than we're already going to go into debt. Like, if we're really going to do the job that is expected of us, and being leaders and communicating and promoting, selling a destination, we can't just burn off our cash reserves to keep the lights on. We have an obligation to pay forward, right? So we have to get people back into the hotels. For us as a leisure destination, that means we're probably gonna have to dig deep in the lines of credit, potentially take out other debt just to run marketing campaigns, which seems absolutely ludicrous not something we would have traditionally thought of. You got to have the money in hand first before you're going to run the ads. Now we're probably going to flip that a little bit and say, no, we're going to have to draw some sort of credit, some sort of line to be able to place ads to get this wheel spinning again and get things moving. Just to grease the skid and get it back in motion. Otherwise, people, potentially choose other destinations, maybe choose not to travel. We got to get the word back out.
Yeah. Well, when I look at that, I can't help immediately think about the tribulations you've been through over the last 2 years with Pure Michigan campaign. I mean, a world-class campaign. We know it has a halo effect in terms of immigration and people moving to Michigan and choosing it as a home. I know that you were poised earlier this week actually to get some good news on that. And based on the severity of this situation, Governor Whitmer had to backtrack on that. Is that coming back? How do you deal with it? When you're looking.
Yeah, the crazy times. It was vetoed last year for 2019. More of a posturing thing on trying to fix our roads, and 147 line items were vetoed from the budget that was presented by our legislation. So we didn't take it super personal that Pure Michigan didn't get funded. But clearly the timing isn't great to try to get it refunded, right? So because we're in crisis, because no one's traveling, Pure Michigan seems to be the least of our worries right now. We're trying to get ventilators and face masks and get beds available for people to stay. For quarantine and whatnot. So a totally different conversation. We were already challenged to get the funding back from the state. It comes out of our general fund. The other issue is we don't pull any other dollars from any other tax or partner that would help to cover a balance or help fill the entire budget of Pure Michigan. The CVBs can buy into partnership packages to be on the website, to do some digital, we did national marketing with it. But, I think this will further force the conversation into either privatizing or somehow finding alternative tax methods or mechanisms to fund a state campaign, because our general fund is being dwindled by the crisis right now. I think all of our municipalities and states, the country is going to be further in debt than ever before after this. And we're going to have to, dig out together, kind of a recessionary sort of mindset, I guess. And that means the model as to how you fund your state and local marketing campaigns is probably going to look different, or at least a lot of people will be asking the question, why are we spending money on that when we're not paying off our legacy costs and our debts and potentially funding the key things that government has to supply.
Good. I totally concur with the whole approach, and I hear it in your answer. The governor has to do what the governor has to do in crisis. Pure Michigan really was a tool or a vehicle for you to do long haul marketing that you wouldn't have been able to do if you were standing alone. What I'm hearing in your answer is you might have to figure out in order how you stand alone with long distance marketing. But back to that point you made earlier, though, but it's the short haul rubber tire traffic that you're going to deal with first. So as you push into Detroit, if you push into South Michigan and Indiana and even over into Illinois, tell me about the shift you see in marketing, because you and I have had this conversation many times. I see a preponderous shift towards digital tools that are social versus digital tools that are advertising. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, Peacock, you and I have debated this for years, and I think we think similarly that it's going to take a collective voice of a destination to get the attention of the world, and for us, get the attention of the Midwest. So when we're looking at trying to get back online, yes, I plan on digging deep and getting financially investing into some traditional and digital mediums to get the ball rolling. We need a collective voice coming from our area. I think Simple View, you and Alton have done a really great job of reminding us that there is a physical Traverse City and there is a digital Traverse City. And if they don't match, and boy, right now they really don't match, you have to try one of them has to shift, and likely the easiest one to shift is digital. So if we can I think in crisis, people recognize or are more attuned to the inconsistencies. So I'm optimistic businesses and other organizations, along with us, will be more cognizant of our messaging, be more in alignment, hopefully work more collectively on, if we're going to go after Chicago, let's make sure Chicagoland understands our message and we aren't all fragmented and giving misinformation or keeping things up that are outdated and ill-informed. So we'll be far more effective when we turn on what little money we can. If we've got all the voices singing off the same song sheet, we've got a better chance of digging out of this mess.
When you talk about all the voices singing off the same song sheet, you're literally talking about the social channels that hotels and restaurants and attractions have independent of Traverse City tourism.
Right. Indeed. Yeah. In your websites, it's funny as we're dealing with like the restaurant, who does pickup and who does takeout. I mean, we've curated a list on our website. Other people are trying to curate lists. Why wasn't that already an easy toggle click button where, who's doing takeout at what time? I mean, it seems so obvious now, but 3 weeks ago, people would have been like, well, it's a restaurant. I want to go sit down there. I wasn't really thinking about picking up, and nor would that business have thought, well, yeah, we do takeout, because it wasn't their primary thing. But I think we'll have to have more options for our stakeholders to be able to explain who they are and what they do. We'll have to keep them more up to date. And find a way to access all those channels like the TripAdvisors and the Googles and the websites like ours, make sure that all of them are consistent. That's going to be super important moving forward. It's going to take investment, but I think if we want to be successful, we're going to have to. I mean, I went to a website just today, I wanted to go get a sandwich because I was starving. I keep coming into work forgetting to eat, and I'm like, I got to get some food. And I couldn't tell by going to their website whether or not they were open or not. And it's like, and I call them and I couldn't tell, and it kept ringing. And I really, really wanted that sandwich they make, but I didn't end up getting it because they're closed. But that misleading feeling that, boy, I'm coming up to Traverse City for something, and I'm coming up for the digital world that I've experienced, and I'm getting the reality. And the reality, if it doesn't match, that's you're going to lose that customer potentially. It's a bad value proposition if what people are coming for isn't there once they get there.
Well, I so underline that point because, what I'm hearing in a number of consults with the government here on transportation, on education, on tourism, we sit around that table with Queen's Park, is in the analysis of this, we're all going to look back and say, you know what? Given the state of digital in the world, we actually were unprepared. The technology was there and we hadn't adapted it to education. I mean, our schools are scrambling to get back online with distance learning, but they haven't spent the past 4 years understanding the systems, the permissions, the idea of access to devices in people's homes. Similarly, we're saying the same thing in tourism. All our restaurants and hotels all have listings capability, and wouldn't it have been nice if, as you say, if we could press a button and make a list for them? Your experience running around trying to find an open restaurant, I've heard 10 stories, of people going online, finding goods, checking the goods are in stock, making sure the store is open, only to find out the Google Maps listing was actually incorrect and the store isn't open. And it's we have the capabilities to deal with these things, but I think we're all going to look back and say we should have had a more methodical approach about putting these things in place. And maybe that's the silver lining here. We'll look at that.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about the industry in general. Let's talk about your peers, the CEOs that are out there that you work with on a regular basis, the people you interact with in your role at Destinations International. What would you want to say to them? What would you want to ask them about, or what would you want to tell them?
Wow, how many hours have we got? I mean, what's been interesting in this whole experience with the coronavirus and the aftermath of of all the issues that have come up from it. It was really a pleasure to see DI step up and get some CEOs talking early on in the areas that potentially were affected first, the bigger metropolitan areas, Atlanta, San Francisco, the DC area, Toronto. In hearing how they were responding really helped to paint the canvas of what we were about ready to experience as a country. Meaning, yeah, if you haven't already lost all your convention conference business, be prepared to. If you haven't cut off your marketing budgets, you haven't laid people off, you got to do that. So I think some of the bigger destinations that were really getting it, to have them kind of shine a light on that early was important. I'm surrounded, as are most of us, by a lot of smaller DMOs who are challenged. So trying to figure out how to pass these words of wisdom down through the ranks, because not all our CVBs and DMOs are members of DI, and not all of them are in the same user groups and organizations that would be talking about these pieces. So trying to get them to understand the reality is, we need to do probably a better job as a CVB community of pushing messages out and talking to one another. And I'm betting there's going to be a lot better and closer friendships amongst comp sets and within regions as we go through this together. I'm still curious, and I'm a numbers guy, so I'm always curious to see, what people are modeling for, how it will impact them financially, how long that tail is going to stretch. I've heard early estimates that it'll take maybe 4 or 5 years to get back to where we were. Regionally, more of my maybe comp sets comparable to like Traverse City's resort type of feel. I'm curious to see, what's Amelia Island or Steamboat Springs, or some of these more seasonal resort type towns. What does the tail look like for them? Because I think when you lose conference business and you lose some of that travel, the more business traveler and leisure, the tail might be longer. I think maybe for a Traverse City, and I'm just wearing the rose-colored glasses, I'm kind of optimistic our tail won't extend as far, or we will recover more quickly, because if we can get our leisure back, and if that is really one of the first things that will recuperate, maybe I don't have as long of a window to try to bring things back online. So thinking about financial modeling and what's new staffing look like, and I'm curious to see how they're addressing things digitally. How are they going to market? Are they going to be more savvy and cut fat and really hone in on the things they know they can convert? I'd love to know how they're answering those questions.
Well, let's dive into the point you made about taking 4 or 5 years, and I'm going to ask you the question a little bit differently. 5 years from now, you're back. Traverse City Tourism is working, but how is it different? What does the future look like?
What do I think it looks like?
Sure.
Well, I've always believed we're heading in a digital direction anyway. So, we've got a great visitor center, but as I kind of expressed earlier, we've taken on this county adjacent to us and to do their marketing. They have a visitor center, and we haven't been necessarily supportive of the idea of maintaining that, because the foot traffic isn't there. And from a cost payout perspective, it doesn't necessarily make sense to keep it open. We get a ton of foot traffic here in Traverse City, but from a dollars and cents standpoint, and thinking about what our role in the future is it time for us to kind of let go of those sorts of responsibilities, or lighten our responsibility in the face-to-face space and try to find a more digital way to communicate, in real time still? That's fine. We can still find ways to help people out, on their devices, where most people are going once they get in market nowadays. So I think you might see for us at least, a conversion from brick and mortar even more so to digital. Unfortunately, I'll say, we're probably gonna have to reassess our staffing situation. I know a lot of my colleagues are doing temporary layoffs, but I think we're also all kind of thinking about, how long is this going to take? Are we going to be able to just bring everybody back? And if not, what are the key areas where we're going to need to focus? And our focus may look different. Maybe I'm not focusing on the things that I did before, and maybe it is more important to transition some of those employees into more of a digital social space, not just for us, because I think Traverse City does an excellent job, but we have a lot of stakeholders, members that we can lift. Maybe that's our role right now, is to just be their consultant, to be advocates for them in that space and try to help them, connect dots so that they're helping to tell the better story. So that's where my head is. Unfortunately, I think, like I said before, we're going to spend a lot of money early on just to recapture our traditional markets. and not lose those potentially. And then go back to, hopefully, I'm optimistic within a year or two, we'll be back to the national marketing campaigns and some of the stuff we were doing with Pure Michigan, depending on how our state wants to approach travel moving forward.
Super. All right, I'm going to give you the rapid fire round now here. I'm going to ask you questions. Give me 10 word answers or less, and I'm going to end up on 2 questions, which are questions you asked me, but I'm going to throw them back at you. So, how is this going to impact your travel personally? Let's talk about Trevor and family.
I'm grateful that it will keep me in the most beautiful place on earth for a little bit.
Well put. All right. What do you think destination organizations could be doing better as regional leaders?
Oh, man. Somehow we need to better impress upon our own regions how tourism transcends. Don Welsh says it really well. He says, you're destination organizations, you're not DMOs anymore. And that's really what we got to be. We got to be DOs, destination organizations.
Well, and you referenced Don and DI. I want to talk very briefly about Jack Johnson's work on advocacy, because I think we all see a huge hole in our advocacy efforts that is made even more apparent by this crisis. Just a couple of words on that, if you would.
Well, he's done a good job creating a lexicon for us. I love he keeps expanding it, gives us advice. Yeah, I think the anti-tourism over tourism rhetoric is going to be, there's arguments that after this we'll be strong. We've got a stronger position to tell, hey, you know what? Look how bad things were when tourism wasn't around, when we lost all that travel money. I think on the flip side of it, we should also be preparing a defense, which is you're going to have a lot of people saying we are relying too much on tourism, and this is what happens when you rely too much on tourism. So at least for a town like Traverse City, where it can be controversial, where there are a lot of residents, people who've relocated here who don't want to see that heavy summertime traffic, I think we're going to have to think creatively and innovatively about how we, how we communicate our value, what we're bringing culturally, economically. We can't just keep pointing to how important we are to the economic activity. There's got to be deeper roots than that, because I think the question could be why don't we diversify more? If this is truly, if we are that reliant, then maybe we need to be more diversified as a region.
Trevor, I'm so glad you brought that lens to this, because I've been having this discussion, and it's very easy to say, geez, with tourism being a top 5 economic driver in the state of Michigan, obviously the next thing that happens in Traverse City is you get tons of support. You're the first person who said to me, well, actually, we've got a whole bunch of people who believe the opposite, who are actually going to try to capitalize on the opposite of this. And I think we need to be really aware of those kind of questions, which is, as we roll into this, let's not assume that everybody's going to row in the same direction, but let's be prepared for that. And I think that's sort of the message coming out of DI and advocacy is, there's always going to be somebody looking for those funds to do other things with them. I know that you operate on the principle that your use of those funds is the best contributor to the economy that you could possibly make in your given destination. But it's not a given that everybody understands that, is it?
It isn't. And I think you mentioned the halo effect reporting that Longwoods has put out in the past. Michigan, I think, was one of their first, if not their very first market that they evaluated. Traverse City, we just actually did a halo effect paper that we were going to publish like within a week. I mean, it's so funny how everything changes so quickly, but I think reminding people of a deeper value of a destination marketing platform. It's not about tourism. And that's what I think, this is where everything we've failed. We definitely have failed, is that we keep talking about tourism economy. This is just the economy. It's the economy, stupid, right? We're just trying to keep things moving within our own space. So we're placemakers. We are marketers for all things. We're trying to bring second homeowners here. We're trying to bring, new business entrepreneurs here. We're trying to get people to go to college here. We're doing all the things. we're just wearing a tourism mask right now. So we got to somehow take that tourism mask off. And I go back to Don's words. We're a destination organization. We got to jettison the marketing and to some degree jettison the tourism and make the primary piece our town and our community. And that's what we do. And that's what we talk about, is that place and the culture that is there that we're proud of. Because if we can shift that, if we can kind of change that conversation, I think we win.
So if I were to red circle three things you've said today, it's about stakeholder engagement. That one comes through loud and clear. It's about digital sophistication, and it's about advocacy.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I think that's yeah. Well done. Thanks for doing my homework for me.
Well, I'm paying attention. I'm listening. As Alton would say, he made me listen. All right, we have one last question for you, and it's kind of personal. But what is it the crisis causes you to rethink personally?
Well, like I said at the onset, I've got 3 young ones. I've got a 9-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 13-year-old, and they're home, and they're probably going to be home for a very long time. They're probably not going back to public school this year. And so, I mean, one big thing that I think as a country we need to circle, I know definitely as a state, we need to circle education. And I think we've got some real challenges here because a lot of us depend on those high school age kids to work in our shops in the summer or during peak seasons. We depend on those families for business to come to our destinations and spend money and enjoy their time. But now on the flip side, I'm losing employees because we don't have proper childcare support. And clearly in this crisis, no one does. But education, I think, is paramount. And it's not our role necessarily to lead in it, but I think we need to help innovate it and be creative about it. I challenge America. Why is it, University of Phoenix started offering online classes in 1989? It's 2020, and for some reason my kids can't get online and learn in a public school system. It's like, how did that happen? How did we fail ourselves at such a monumental level that my kids can't get an education from a teacher right now online? And I get it, not everybody has Wi-Fi and connectivity, but the majority do, and we've failed ourselves, and it is going to impact travel and tourism in a lot of different ways. And so that's where my lens is focusing, and it is definitely not my traditional focus. I'm very business minded. I tend to stay in my sector, my lane, but this one, I'm very concerned about our education system right now.
But I think that kind of crisis is happening in every industry in different manifestations. But I certainly concur that we are going to learn to do more with the digital tools we have. And I laugh, but you and I talked about this last week. The state of video conferencing up until the 1st of March, everybody said it was great. And then they actually had to do it. They said, wow, this is a real pain in the ass. We've got to get better. We've got to get better at that too. Yes, it is. All right. We're going to close this out. I can't thank you enough for being here. I think it's really important that people who are engaged in this industry, people who are taking leadership positions, share their ideas and thoughts in an unmitigated fashion. And we, as we all do, we take from those ideas and thoughts and we build on them and we adjust them and we share them back. So I thank you a ton. If I had my way, you would have actually been on as the first guests of the Future Tourism Group talking about digital influence reporting and reputation management. I assure you, my friend, we will get back to that discussion, be it 30, 60, or 90 days. I want to underline the incredible work you've been doing in Traverse City to that end. We're not going to talk about it today, but I think in terms of stakeholder engagement and digital sophistication, you've got a lot to share with the rest of the country on that. So I'm inviting you back, and I thank you for giving us almost an hour of your time today. And I look forward to talking to you again, Trevor. Stay safe.
Yeah, you too, bud. Good to see you.
Take care.